From the Denver Broncos Media Center, welcome to Broncos Country Tonight with Ryan Edwards and Benjamin Allbright.
Welcome to Broncos Country Tonight. Got a lot of great topics for you this fine evening. We're going to start with Peyton Manning working with Drew Lock. No, this isn't a repeat of a show we did a few weeks ago when this news came out. We're actually talking about the latest information we have on how much they actually worked out during the offseason. And Ben, as I understand it, it was upwards of 9 to 10 hours in person, a handful of phone calls and Zoom calls. We'll get to some of the people that were kind of freaking out about that not being enough and all that. But at least on the surface, when you hear that, what is your first thought? Is that the kind of work that hopefully will make a difference in Drew Lock's performance this year?
I don't know what kind of work these people think you're doing. Like, it was that's extensive work. That's more than a 20-minute phone call or two 20-minute phone calls from last summer. You're talking about 10-plus hours to gather instruction, going over the tape and going out back and doing footwork drills and stuff like that and looking at some things. It's plenty of time. And it's spread out over multiple sessions. That's not just one session. And then in addition to that, there's Zoom stuff and everything else they've kind of gone back and forth on. The idea that Peyton Manning and Drew Lock are doing extensive work is frankly wrong. Like, I don't know why anybody would say that, claim that, whatever. That's just wrong.
I guess, I don't know, for some reason it got framed for some out there as though they had spent months on end, like every single day, 10-hour-plus days. Peyton Manning's got a pretty busy schedule. And also I want to add in there, it's not like Drew Lock doesn't have other resources here. Mm-hmm. Drew Lock worked with Jordan Palmer. He had other options out there as far as old coaches to work with, other strength and conditioning. He mentioned Lauren Landau. And he'd been spending a lot of time around the facility. Now, he has limited access to the coaches during the offseason, but he had plenty of other resources.
Right. And that's the thing. Like, the fact that Peyton Manning carved out time out of his busy schedule to make this work shows that Peyton Manning's invested in the success of it. Peyton Manning doesn't do things to lose. He's hyper competitive. And Peyton sees something in Drew enough to invest his time in him. So I don't think that, the people trying to frame this as some kind of PR stunt or whatever it is they're doing this time because they have some kind of other agenda that makes any sense to me. Drew Lock has gone out of his way to try to improve other areas of his game. Why would he not go to the master of those areas to try to seek improvement?
At this point, if you're Drew Lock, you're a sponge. Like, everything about it. And we talked about this a little bit, I think, with Steve Atwater yesterday. Just more of where he's at right now. Hopefully his questions are a little more pointed because he knows more about the scheme. He knows more about his game. He knows more about what he's trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I think that Peyton Manning, being the guy that he was, having the experiences that he had and the skill set that he had, I think Drew, those are the areas where Drew's lacking. And so I think that Drew can go to Peyton and soak up all the experience and the knowledge that Peyton Manning has that he's willing to share. And like we said, 10 hours with a Hall of Fame quarterback, or certainly will be a Hall of Fame quarterback this summer, is invaluable. The idea that that's some PR stop, overnight to get a quick thing, that doesn't make any sense. So I think it's funny to me because a lot of these people that talk about these guys that work with quarterbacks over the course of the summer, honestly, most of the time those guys get about 20 hours total instruction, total over the course of a summer. It's broken up into different things over the course of days, but I don't know. I guess it's people that have just never done it and never experienced it that don't understand what's actually happening here.
I'd like to ask, how many quarterbacks do you think Peyton Manning did that for?
Not many.
I was going to say, how many out there would he be willing to do that for, really? Maybe more than we say, but the fact that he felt comfortable enough, hey, Drew, I want you to come over to my house. I've got this great film room. We can work on your footwork, that type of thing. Drew took him up on that sort of thing. I keep coming at this like, well, what is the negative of this? I'm having a hard time seeing that part.
It's people who don't like Drew Lock trying to spin something or say something that they believe will negatively affect Lock or whatever. It's a preconceived bias thing that people are using. There's no reason to hate this. There's no reason to dislike it. If you don't think that Lock is going to be good, then let him roll out into training camp and he'll either prove you right or prove you wrong, right? So this whole trying to construct a narrative around the we were oversold or whatever it is that they've got out there now is just silly. He went out there and got quality instruction from a Hall of Fame quarterback. Whether or not he incorporates that into his game ultimately remains to be seen.
And I don't remember ever seeing, by the way, any reports out there of this. Like, it certainly didn't come from our show. And so if it came out there from somebody else that he was spending full on every single day for weeks on end, upwards of months, then it came from somewhere else. But it's also a little bit of an indication sometimes of how things happen out there in social media land, where a report it snowballs on itself a bit. And that's what it felt like yesterday when this came out from the Denver Post about the amount that was actually being done there with Peyton Manning and Drew Lock. And all of a sudden people were like, oh, well, that's it? And it's kind of like, well, wait, hold on. I don't ever think we on our show, whether it was Broncos Country Tonight.com or even here on the TV show, ever said anything more than what it was.
Yeah, we didn't mention who the quarterback was. We didn't mention who the additional quarterback coach was. But we mentioned on this show, before the Dalton Reisner interview that leaked the name, we mentioned on this show that Drew was working with someone else in addition to his quarterback coach in an attempt to get better, a very serious someone else. And, we put that out there like that. Then the Dalton Reisner interview came out there, and then people started saying, well, if this is like they brought out the headlines from last year. Like, well, last year was a couple of phone calls. This year is more than phone calls. And that's what we said on this show. We said that exactly that. This was more than phone calls. This was actual work, boots on the ground, work with Peyton Manning. So I don't know where people are saying oversold. I don't know what expectation they had. This is the thing that baffles me is, honestly, this is just a situation where people who don't like Drew Lock are trying to craft a narrative that this is all some kind of stunt instead of just letting it play out. If they're right, it'll play out for itself anyway.
There's really no negative here. And I've tweeted this out. As far as I'm concerned, it's more about quality than quantity here. The quality of experience with Peyton Manning versus the quantity of time with just anybody. I think that's an important thing to note here, and I hope Broncos fans eventually understand the difference. All right, when we come back, we'll talk about Drew Lock's number one option. Courtland Sutton had some fascinating things to say about going into year 2, what maybe Jerry Jeudy and KJ Hamler could learn next year. We'll get to it.
Welcome back to Broncos Country Tonight. Here are Ryan Edwards and Benjamin Allbright.
I would say the biggest thing for me that clicked was understanding defenses and understanding concepts of the offense, why we're doing things, why do I need to be here at this time? What read am I in this play? Understanding how defenses are going to move, understanding how fast defense is going to play, understanding what you're going to get in 3rd and long, understanding what kind of defense you're going to get in 2 minute. All these different things are things that you don't really get to get until the bullets start flying in game time reps. So those dudes being able to get all of those reps throughout the season is only going to help them even more so to, book it in their mind for this upcoming season. Because now when they see something that's similar, like, oh, I remember this. This is how I can move differently to be able to get open, or this is how I can do this differently. But yeah, I think that being able to have that year underneath you definitely helps with just like the understanding of how the game flows.
Welcome back to Broncos Country Tonight. There was wide receiver 1, Courtland Sutton, talking about what changed for him as he entered year 2. We all know that from what Courtland Sutton did in year 1 was a significant difference into year 2. He obviously showed Pro Bowl level receiving talent. He able to sort of jump into what we be the conversation of a wide receiver 1. And I like the point there at the very beginning, saying the biggest thing for him was what clicked was understanding defenses and understanding the concepts, the offense, and why they were doing things. And you think about that, and you've said this for a very long time, Ben, about how it takes a little bit of time for receivers to develop. And that's kind of that jump, in my opinion, that's more on the mental side than it is the physical side. We know that Courtland Sutton has a lot of physical abilities, but it's the mental jump that usually seems to make the difference for a lot of these guys.
With wide receiver, a lot of technique is involved. I mean, you're learning a lot, too, because you have to learn a full route tree. You got to learn the concept of the play, and you got to learn all 3 wide receiver positions that are out there, and you be able to do any which one of them at any given time, right? And so I think that there's more to it. It just takes a longer learning curve. Wide receivers tend not to hit their stride until late year 2, sometimes even early year 3. In terms of who they can be as a player. And so you're digesting information, you're refining your technique. It's not just college football where you're always up against a corner and man and you're just trying to out-athlete them. You've got zone coverages. You've got to learn, how to bend your route off shallow, how to cut that route off in order to leave the zone guy, out of the position so you can get the football, create windows for your quarterback. There's just a lot of things you have to learn as a receiver going from the college game into the NFL. And I think a lot of guys don't realize that. They come into the league, they've just out-athleted everybody, and you can't do that at the NFL because everybody's the best athlete. So I think with a guy like Courtland, we saw that. We saw him go from being essentially a basketball player on grass in college to becoming a wide receiver in the NFL. And it came along from having great tutelage from Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders to his own intelligence and work ethic, applying those lessons and becoming who he is. And I'm looking for a big year from him.
Yeah, and the value there for Courtland, not only for himself individually, but he sort of passed the torch on to these next receivers coming in the building. I mean, think about that. He did have Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders. And even in his second year, the beginning of it, before Emmanuel Sanders was traded, he had him here. So he got a chance to learn and watch and see how it was done, and even see examples of things he wanted to improve on. Remember, Courtland Sutton and Emmanuel Sanders kind of butted heads a little bit there in training camp, as they both had a little bit of different idea of what they wanted to be doing out there.
They did more than butt heads. I think they threw some bows. But, Courtland has a rare work ethic. I mean, it's a don't round out any rep, don't round out any cut, kind of work ethic, and follow through. And he didn't appreciate Emmanuel Sanders not setting the example for some of the other guys that were there. And that's a leadership mentality. And when you got a guy like Courtland in the wide receiver room, it's a big thing. It's certainly something those wide receivers were missing last year, is his hunger and his desire to succeed, and his ability to set the standard and hold people accountable. And that's a big thing in anybody pursuing a championship or pursuing a big goal. If you don't have somebody who sets a standard and some people that hold people accountable to that standard, then things slip through the crack. Guys get sloppy, guys get lazy.
I know that people tend to be impatient in our society, and I know that people wanted to see Jerry Jeudy make a Pro Bowl or All-Pro in his first year. But I like the way Courtland framed part of that answer in a way of, if these guys recognize, and if we all recognize the reps that happened for these guys, the amount of just learning that happened on the job for Jerry Jeudy and KJ Hamler, understanding that none of it was wasted. I mean, like the whole conversation of, are there ever wasted reps? Now, in this case, there aren't really wasted reps if you're getting in-game experience that you can utilize into the next year. And that's kind of how Courtland framed it for himself. It's like, look, did I accomplish everything I wanted as a rookie? Of course not. He had drops. He had issues. He didn't know a full route tree. Mm-hmm. He got into year 2, and he took that as, okay, well, I learned a lot in year 1. I'm going to now take all of that and build on it for year 2. And he's kind of hoping that Jerry Jeudy and KJ Hamler do the same thing.
And they need to. Jerry Jeudy has got to prove to people that he can hang on to the football. Jerry Jeudy came into the NFL as an advanced route runner. That's rare. But you can be the best route runner in the world. And if you can't hang on to the ball, it doesn't do you any good. You can be the fastest guy in the world. You can't catch the ball, it doesn't do you any good. So, in the end, I think that you're hoping, if you're Courtland Sutton, you're hoping those guys take the lessons that you had, because Courtland wasn't a complete receiver. He did drop some footballs in his rookie year. There were some concerns. And so I think that if you could take a guy like Jerry, who is further along in his development, and say, hey, look, you got to work on this, you got to get this part down, and hammer that home so that he gets it, I think that's a good thing. KJ Hamler just needs some route refinement. I mean, he hangs on to the football. I haven't seen any big drops out of him or anything.
He had the one in the Kansas City game last year. But
other than that, there weren't any just atrocious drops. There was the typical amount of drops, I should say. It wasn't like Jerry Jeudy where you're like, oh, not again, And so I think with KJ, you need some route refinement. You still want to work the jugs machine and work on that hand-eye coordination and all that. But I think with him, it's just route refinement and understanding being a complete receiver rather than a take-the-top-off guy, whereas Jerry Jeudy has got to get the hand-eye coordination, the catching down.
But how do you think Jerry Judy's development wasn't impacted by the fact that Courtland wasn't there most of the year?
I think that, like I said, the first question that you mentioned, I think that if you have somebody that sets a standard, demands accountability, I think it's a big thing, and I don't think they had that last year. Tim Patrick is kind of the veteran of that, but it really was just kind of his first year as being an air quotes starter, even though he's been a veteran around the league. And so, I think that for him, Tim, it's difficult to take that kind of leadership position because he simply doesn't have the experience as a starter. He's got to mind his own P's and Q's before he's the guy that's out there telling other people they need to mind theirs.
Right, and that's exactly right. And of course, Tim Patrick also knows that he's filling in the shoes at that point a little bit of Courtland Sutton. It's a next man up mentality. I mean, you have to have that. But on the other side of that, there's an understanding of, okay, well, the rookies had to step up big. Tim Patrick was kind of filling in. Courtland Sutton is still the man, and we know that. We know the way that he interacts with those guys in the locker room. We know that they treat him like the leader that he wants to be, ultimately, for this team. All right, when we come back, how is the defense reacting to the quarterback competition? Get to that next.
Welcome back to Broncos Country Tonight. Here are Ryan Edwards and Benjamin Allbright.
Welcome back to Broncos Country Tonight. Let's get into how the defense is reacting to the quarterback competition. Justin Simmons and Von Miller were both asked about it earlier this week, and both of them, I thought, said it almost identical, which is, again, kind of being on the same page, and that's a good thing, I think, overall for everybody. But they said, look, it's nothing but healthy competition, and that's going to make the best possible quarterback situation that we could possibly have here. But it does come to a point where there are sides taken, where the defense does notice who is performing better out there on the field, and they do start to think about who's going to actually give us the best chance to win.
Well, yeah, the defense definitely has their eye on that, and the reason they've had their eye on it is a lack of that performance over the last few years. Those guys all know, and they're going to see in training camp which quarterback is better. They're going to know, and they're going to give input to their coach, say, look, coach, so-and-so, and we'll go from there. Drew Lock is going to start out as QB1. Whether they split the reps, whether Teddy even takes the first rep, although I don't think he will, in training camp, Drew Lock, it's his job to lose and Teddy's job to win as far as that kind of stuff goes. Drew has to go out there and show that he can get rid of the turnovers, and he's going to be going up against a very good defense capable of generating them. So he's going to have to be even more careful with doing that. That said, he knows these guys. He's been around them. I think that there's a natural tendency to root for your guy. If you go back and you look at the way the defense reacted when Drew Lock was leading them to wins, they were very excited for Drew. In a way that they weren't about Trevor Siemian or Joe Flacco, Brandon Allen, any of those guys. Everybody knows they got to win, and so the defense is keenly going to have their eye on which of these guys provides them the best opportunity to win.
I love how you framed that, too, because Mike Purcell was on Shelby Harris's podcast recently, and he was talking about the swagger of Drew Lock. The defense really likes him. So this becomes an interesting situation, too, because they do like Drew. I think they'd love to see him succeed. I don't think that this is we're going to back Drew until we don't have a reason not to. But again, like you just have a natural tendency, if you like a guy, that you're going to kind of root for him. So I do wonder at what point that rooting interest, if Drew has strings to color a couple of days, like, all right, that's our guy. That's my quarterback. He's going to give us the best chance. And I'm not saying that that's any kind of negative for Teddy Bridgewater, but Teddy Bridgewater is going to win this thing as a result of being more consistent, as a result of not turning the ball over, as a result of just saying, I can give you baseline level of quarterback play, and it's not going to go up or down too much in any given week, where Drew, that even when you hit week one, you just don't really know.
Yeah, if Teddy wins, it will be on the strength of not turning the football over. I mean, that's really what this quarterback competition is all about. Who can execute the offense, move the chains, and not turn the football over, period. And we've seen, unfortunately, Drew Lock have early boneheaded decisions in games. Now he bounces back from those, and he comes back. If you took like the last 3 quarters of a game and compared it to his first quarter, I mean, it would be a night and day difference in most of those games. He's got to start off a game like that. He's got to start off with the right mindset, not make a mistake and be like, oh yeah, I've got to do that. Oh yeah, I've got to take what they give me. And it really has to have that ingrained. And hopefully this offseason, the study with Peyton Manning, the practices, the commitment to the mental aspect of the game, hopefully that has put him in that mindset.
I was reading some of the quotes from Justin Simmons, and he says, every year you have to come in and compete for your job. It's not necessarily handed to you off of what you've done in prior years. And so last year, the Broncos handed Drew Lock the starting job. I'm not saying that the defense had a specific problem with that. I think that they liked an understanding of no questioning, this is what it is. But we have more information here. But do you think there's a little bit of that from the defense that's saying, hey, we are all competing for our jobs. This guy hadn't done enough. Maybe there is something to that.
It definitely is. There's a cachet to earning it, and especially from defensive players who, by and large, have to earn it more than offensive players.
Agreed.
If you draft an offensive player, even not even a quarterback, a receiver, a running back, whatever, they're going to play. You draft an offensive player, you're going to roll them out there. Defensive players, even if you draft them early, they got to scratch and claw their way, like they do. Outside of like Von Miller or, Bradley Chubb, and even then, it's kind of a rotational.
Justin Simmons is a third rounder, wasn't guaranteed anything.
Right, and so that's the thing. Like Lloyd Cushenberry's a third rounder's out there starting at center. Justin Simmons had to claw his way up through Darian Stewart, T.J. Watt, all those guys, and claw his way up to the job and earn it. And so there's a cachet to earning it. There is, and in football, it is considered the ultimate meritocracy. We talk about nepotism sometimes and all that kind of stuff, but in the end, if you're not good enough and you're not able to earn it, you're not going to get it. And that's kind of the thing. So I think that there is, whoever wins this job is going to have the team squarely behind them because they earned it.
Yeah, and at that point, yes, you're right. I mean, there's a certain amount of, okay, well, we liked Drew. If he wins it, this only reinforces that feeling and belief in him. Mm-hmm. On the other side, if he doesn't, and we've said this all along in this quarterback competition, if Drew Lock doesn't earn it, doesn't win the job, Teddy Bridgewater does, well, then you're probably going in another direction next year altogether at quarterback. Doesn't mean that Teddy can't potentially stay here longer. They give him an extension, that type of thing. The Broncos are going to be in very good cap positioning as we understand it. But you will likely not, you will be bringing in at least a rookie quarterback, a young quarterback to develop either way if Drew Lock doesn't win this thing. So it's interesting implications, in my opinion, on both sides of this coin.
Yeah, I think so. If Drew wins the job, it'll have to be convincingly, too. It's not, when I say it's his job to lose and Teddy's to win, he has to win it convincingly, too. He can't just kind of be the same guy and Teddy kind of be the same guy and you default into one of these. You can't have a Sanchez and Trevor Siemian quarterback competition again. You can't have that. You need a clear, definitive, decisive winner when all's said and done here. And, Drew has got to come out and take the job. It's his job to lose, but he's got to take that job and put it so far out of reach that Teddy Bridgewater and his safe methodology of playing can't take it from him.
No, I think that's a very good distinction, and I think it'll go a long way to telling what kind of season this team is ultimately going to have. That does it for us. For Benjamin Allbright, I'm Ryan Edwards. Thanks for watching Broncos Country Tonight.
Thanks for watching Broncos Country Tonight. Tune in to Broncos TV every weeknight at 6:30, right here on KTVD Channel 20.